Okay, so let's unpack this. I want to start today with a visualization exercise, if you will. I
Okay.
want you to close your eyes. Well, unless you're driving. Please don't close your eyes if you're driving.
Right. Important safety tip.
But picture a business, a massive decentralized conglomerate. It has franchise locations on almost every street corner in America.
Mm.
It employs hundreds of thousands of people.
hmm
And its annual revenue, just the revenue from its, let's call them loyal customers, is somewhere between 50 and 70 billion dollars.
It is a staggering number. It's one of those figures that, you almost can't wrap your head around it.
You can't.
To put that in perspective for everyone, that is larger than the GDP of entire nations. We're talking countries like Bulgaria or Uruguay. It's on par with the annual revenue of some of the biggest tech giants.
Exactly. If this thing were a country, it would have a seat at the UN.
Right.
If it were a corporation, it would be high up on the Fortune 100 list. But we aren't talking about a country, and we aren't talking about Apple or Amazon. We're talking about the estimated annual contribution revenue of evangelical churches in the United States.
And that's a key distinction, just the evangelical slice of the pie.
Right. If you zoom out to total Christian giving in the U.S., the number basically doubles. It goes up to around 130 or maybe 140 billion.
Yeah.
But for this deep dive, based on the documents we've been analyzing, we're really going to focus in on that 50 to 70 billion dollar evangelical segment.
We have to, because that's where the data, it paints a very specific and I'd say a very urgent picture about the priorities of the modern religious landscape.
And that leads us to the big question, the slightly uncomfortable question that we're going to spend the next hour or so unpacking. When you have an industry moving $70 billion a year,
Right.
where does the money actually go?
Yeah.
Because we have this fascinating source today. It's a document titled Feeding Jesus' Sheep, and it performs what it calls a back-of-the-envelope audit of the modern church.
And the results, they aren't just about accounting. I want to be really clear about that right from the start.
This isn't a gotcha piece.
No, not at all. We aren't here to, catch someone buying too many lattes with the tithe money or debate the ethics of tax exemption. That's a whole other conversation. This is a structural analysis.
It's an audit of the soul of the organization.
Precisely. We are engaging in an exploration of ecclesiology.
Okay, let's pause on that word, ecclesiology. It sounds like something you'd pay 40 grand a year to learn at a university.
Or a word you'd use to win a Scrabble game. Yeah.
Right. So break that down for us. What is that?
It's simpler than it sounds, though it is a weighty concept. Ecclesiology is just the theological study of the church. What is the church? What is it for? How is it supposed to function?
Okay.
Usually when people have this discussion, they quote Bible verses or they get into arguments about church government. But today, we're doing something different. We are looking at ecclesiology through the lens of resource allocation.
Through the budget.
Through the budget, because as that old saying goes, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value.
That's the core tension here, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source argues there is this massive disconnect, a chasm, really, between what the church claims its mission is and where it actually writes the checks.
And they use this incredibly sticky metaphor to describe it, the cornucopia budget.
It's such a striking visual. I can see it immediately.
Yeah.
For those who, don't have Thanksgiving decorations up yet, a cornucopia is that horn-shaped basket.
The horn of plenty.
Right. It's got a really wide open mouth at the front, and then it tapers down to a tiny narrow point at the back.
And the argument is that the modern evangelical church budget is exactly that shape.
The front door, the marketing, the evangelism, the whole spectacle designed to get people in, that's the wide mouth.
And it consumes the vast majority of the resources. But then, as you move down the horn,
As a believer, stays in the church, gets older, matures in their faith,
the resources taper off. They just vanish.
the source explicitly says, we are starving the mature believers at the back end of the horn.
Which is what sets up the radical proposal we'll get to later, the reversed cornucopia, the idea of literally flipping that entire financial structure upside down.
But we can't get there yet.
No. Before we can even entertain that, we have to understand the status quo. We have to, look at the receipts.
So let's get into the weeds. Section 1, the status quo. Where do the billions go?
Yep.
Now, you mentioned earlier that getting these numbers is tricky.
It is.
It's not like we can just download a spreadsheet from church.gov.
No, and that is a crucial caveat for the listener. You have to understand the context of this data. If you want to know where Apple spends its money, you go to the SEC website and download their 10K filing.
It's public record.
It's public law. Public charities have to file a Form 990. But in the United States, churches are uniquely exempt from filing standardized financial reports with the IRS.
So it's a black box, financially speaking.
In many ways, yes. There is no church IRS database we can query. So the author of our source had to construct what we call an order of magnitude estimate.
Okay, so how do they do that?
They pulled data from aggregated surveys, from denomination-level reports, and from internal budget allocations from hundreds of individual churches to build a composite picture.
So it's a mosaic.
It's a mosaic. It's not exact to the penny, but it provides a very, very reliable directional map of where the money flows.
It's enough to see the shape of the cornucopia.
Exactly. It reveals the spending philosophy.
Okay. So the source breaks down the spending into 4 distinct stages of ministry. They call this the longitudinal gospel curriculum.
Which is a bit of a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but I want to walk through these one by one because the disparity in the dollar amounts is, well, it's wild.
Let's do it.
Stage 1. This is the heavy hitter. This is the big one. Evangelism, outreach, marketing, and missions. According to this audit, how much of that $70 billion pie gets eaten up right here at the start?
The conservative estimates, and I stress conservatives, suggest anywhere from 10 to 20% of the total operational budget.
Okay, 10 to 20%. But in raw dollars, what are we talking about?
In raw dollars, we are talking about $5 to $14 billion annually.
$14 billion.
Yeah.
That is a massive industry on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's comparable to the global marketing spend of some of the world's biggest brands.
It absolutely is.
What exactly are we buying for $14 billion? What does that get you?
It's a mix of the traditional and the modern. Obviously, it includes, local outreach events and global missions sending people overseas.
The classic stuff.
The classic stuff. But increasingly, a huge chunk of this is what a business would call customer acquisition.
Right.
We're talking digital marketing, Facebook ads, SEO for your church website, Instagram campaigns. But it also includes what the source somewhat cynically calls entertainment antics.
I highlighted that phrase, entertainment antics. It sounds like a critique of a bad variety show or something.
It does paint a picture, doesn't it? We're talking about the production value of the Sunday service.
The show.
The show. Intelligent lighting rigs that cost tens of thousands of dollars, haze machines, and please don't call it smoke, it's haze.
It's haze, right.
High-fidelity sound systems, and massive LED video walls. It's a concert-level production.
Wow.
It also covers things like CCLI licensing.
The CCLI, what's that?
Christian Copyright Licensing International. Churches pay millions upon millions in fees just to have the legal right to project the lyrics of the latest worship hits on the screen.
So you have to pay to sing the songs?
You have to pay to even show the words. It's a huge, huge industry.
So the concert experience is legally and technically expensive.
Extremely. And here's the kicker. The source argues that even this $14 billion estimate is likely stingy.
Stingy? How can that be stingy? It already sounds huge.
Because think about the overhead. The building itself, the mortgage or the rent, the staff salaries, the heating, the cooling, the electricity. In a modern seeker-sensitive church, what is the primary purpose of that expensive physical auditorium?
It's for the Sunday morning event.
It's for the show. So implicitly, a huge portion of the entire facility budget is actually support for stage 1. It's all part of the front door.
Okay, to be fair, that makes a certain kind of sense, right? I mean, if you don't get people in the door, you don't have a church, you have to keep the lights on.
That is the prevailing logic. It is. It's the growth mindset. You invest in the thing that drives the metrics.
And the metric everyone counts is butts and seats on Sunday.
Sunday attendance.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate key performance indicator, the KPI of the modern church.
Okay, so the horn is wide open. We're pouring billions and billions into the welcome mat.
A very expensive welcome mat.
Now let's look at stage 2, baptismal catechism.
Right. So this is the teaching a new believer receives right before or right after baptism. The foundational "Here is what we believe" class.
What's the price tag on that?
It drops off a cliff. We go from a potential $14 billion down to maybe 0.5 to 1.4 billion. So that's roughly 1 to 2% of the total budget.
1%. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a rounding error. It's negligible.
It is. And honestly, the source notes that most churches don't even have a dedicated budget line for this.
So where does it come from?
It's usually a volunteer, maybe a deacon or an elder who teaches a 4-week class in a basement room on a Tuesday night. There's no capital investment. There's no production value. It's photocopied handouts.
It's treated as a quick checkpoint.
That's it. Okay, you're saved. Here's the water. Fill out this card. Moving on.
It feels like corporate onboarding. You know, when you get a new job and HR spends 2 hours showing you where the bathroom is and how to log into your email and then just says, good luck.
That is a fantastic analogy. Stage 1 is the flashy recruitment campaign, the headhunters, the signing bonus, the big promises.
Yeah.
Stage 2 is the hasty, underfunded orientation. And as we know from the corporate world, bad onboarding leads to high turnover.
Right. People get confused and they drift away. Okay, moving down the horn. Stage 3, new believers education. The source calls this feeding lambs.
Here we see a bit of a rebound in the spending. This category typically consumes about 8 to 15% of the budget.
So in dollars, that's what...
Roughly $4 to $10 billion.
Okay, so it's a decent chunk of change again. And this is essentially Sunday school and small groups.
Correct. Sunday school for kids and adults, small groups, community groups, Bible studies. It's the, let's call it the maintenance layer of the church social structure.
Maintenance layer, I like that.
It's designed to keep people connected, give them a place to belong, and cover the basics of Christian living over and over again.
So let me get this straight. We spent a fortune getting them in, almost nothing explaining the contract they just signed, and then a decent amount just keeping them in the building.
In a holding pattern, yes, it keeps the community cohesive, which is important, but it's not necessarily about deep growth.
Which brings us to the end of the horn, the narrowest point. Stage 4, mature training. This is the feeding sheep stage.
The solid food.
What are the numbers here? The source puts this at 5 to 10%, maybe $7 billion on the high end. Yeah, that doesn't sound terrible compared to the others. It's more than catechism.
At first glance, yes. But wait, we have to look closer at that number. The source warns us that this line item is often a misnomer.
A misnomer? How so?
Because when a church budget says advanced training or seminary support, who is that money actually for?
The pastor? The staff?
Exactly. It's usually not for the guy sitting in the third queue. It's professional development for the paid staff. It's sending the youth pastor to a conference. Or it's a check the church sends to its denomination to support a seminary 3 states away.
Oh, I see. So it's essentially R&D or executive training. It's not customer education.
Precisely. The amount of money spent on advanced, deep, rigorous theological training for the layperson, the accountant, the mechanic, the stay-at-home mom who has been a believer for 20 years, is likely a fraction of this already small percentage.
So if you're a mature believer, the church is effectively spending $0 on your continued growth.
That is the inescapable conclusion of the audit. The cornucopia is huge at the start to capture you, but as you walk the path of discipleship, as you get older in the faith, the resources vanish. The church is, in effect, shouting, we will spend a fortune to introduce you to Jesus, but we won't spend a dime to help you know him deeply.
It's like a university that spends 90% of its budget on the freshman mixer and the football team.
Right.
And then tells the PhD students, hey, good luck. Hope you find some books in the library.
And if you ran a university that way, you'd lose your accreditation. You'd be a laughingstock. But that is the standard operating model for the American church.
This is a perfect pivot to Section 2, the theological critique. Because the source isn't just saying this is bad accounting or, a bad business strategy.
No.
They're arguing it's actually bad theology. It's a betrayal of the mission itself.
It all comes down to how we interpret the Great Commission.
Go ye therefore and teach all nations. Matthew 28. It's probably the most famous command in the New Testament.
It is. And we have been conditioned, really, by the modern evangelical movement to interpret the Great Commission almost exclusively as recruitment.
As evangelism.
As stage 1.
As stage 1, getting people in the door. But the source points us to another equally important passage, John 21.
Okay.
This is the famous scene on the beach after the resurrection. Jesus is cooking breakfast over a charcoal fire for Peter and the disciples.
The do you love me conversation, the restoration of Peter.
Yes. Jesus asks Peter 3 times, do you love me? And each time Peter says, Lord, you know that I love you. And then Jesus gives him a command. And this is crucial. He doesn't say recruit my sheep.
He doesn't say market to my sheep. He doesn't say put on a really great show for my sheep.
He says feed them.
Feed my lamb and then tend my sheep and then feed my sheep. Feeding implies nutrition. It implies sustenance, it implies growth and maturation.
So it's about stages 3 and 4.
It's heavily about stages 3 and 4. The source argues that the biblical emphasis for the church post-conversion is overwhelmingly weighted toward the latter stages, making disciples, teaching them to observe all things. But our financial emphasis is stuck on the starting line.
There's some really strong language in the source regarding this. It talked about the plight of the mature believer in this system.
There was.
It said that stage 4 believers, the sheep, are often abused or milked to death. That's a powerful phrase.
It is provocative phrasing, but think about the organizational dynamics. It makes a certain kind of cynical sense.
How so?
If you are a mature believer, you know your Bible, you've been attending for 10 years, you're stable, you're committed, how does the leadership view you? What is your function in the system?
Well, you're the volunteer base. You're the A-team.
Exactly. You aren't viewed as a student who needs more learning. You are viewed as a resource. You are the free labor.
You run the nursery, you park the cars, you usher, you lead a small group.
And most importantly, you tithe. You provide the consistent funding that pays for the massive stage 1 marketing budget that brings in the new people.
Wow. So you're not the destination of the ministry, you're the battery.
You are the battery powering the recruitment machine. The critique is that the church milks the mature sheep to buy milk for the lambs.
And the tragic irony is?
The tragic irony is that the mature sheep eventually starve. They plateau. They stop growing. They get bored. Because the budget, and therefore the programming, isn't designed to feed them.
This really creates a fundamental tension between two models of what a church is for. The seeker-sensitive model versus the discipleship model.
That's the battleground of the last 30 years. In the 90s and 2000s, the seeker model unquestionably won.
And the logic was pretty compelling on the surface.
It was. The logic was, the mature people are already saved. They're fine. They can take care of themselves. We need to focus all our energy on the lost. And that sounds noble. It sounds missional.
But the unintended consequence.
The unintended consequence is that you create a church that is a mile wide and an inch deep.
And the source asks this really pointed question. If the biblical word for building up the church is edification, which means building, constructing, why is our budget skewed toward entertainment?
You've traded depth for dazzle.
Dazzle is the perfect word. And again, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man here.
No, it's not about being anti-fun.
Right. Production value isn't inherently evil. A good band is better than a bad band. But when it cannibalizes the budget for actual substantive education, you have a problem.
It's a systemic problem, and this leads to a very practical issue that the source dives into next. It's not just that the money is missing for stage 4, it's that the curriculum is broken.
This is section 3, the pedagogical disconnect. I found this part fascinating because it explains why the teaching in so many churches often feels so shallow or repetitive.
The source identifies 2 distinct layers of instruction in the Christian world, and it points out that they effectively speak different languages. They don't connect.
Layer A is the high end. This is the seminary.
Right. Think about what a pastor goes through to get an M.Divin, a Master of Divinity degree. It is a grueling, intense academic degree.
We're talking about institutions like Southern Seminary or Trinity Evangelical or Dallas Theological.
Top-tier graduate schools, and what are they studying? It's basically a graduate degree in ancient Near Eastern literature, philosophy, and history.
So it's not just how to give a good sermon.
Oh, not at all. They are learning Koine Greek and Biblical Hebrew so they can read the texts in the original languages. They are studying systematic theology, which is like advanced philosophy. They are debating the finer points of the Council of Chalcedon from the 5th century. They are reading John Calvin and Martin Luther in the original.
So they're being trained as absolute experts. They're the PhDs.
They are the PhDs, but then they graduate and they get a job at a local church. And this is Lael B, the pulpit.
And what happens on Sunday morning?
The newly minted pastor steps into the pulpit. He looks out at his congregation, tired parents, teenagers on their phones, visitors who aren't sure what they believe, and he has this moment of panic.
Yeah.
He realizes, if I start parsing Greek verbs and talking about supralapsarianism versus infralapsarianism, they are going to fall asleep, or worse, just leave and never come back.
So he pivots.
He pivots hard. The source describes the typical pulpit curriculum as needs-led, or my favorite term, loosey-goosey.
I love that technical term.
Loosey-goosey. It refers to topical sermons. 3 ways to have a better marriage. 5 steps to overcome anxiety. How to be a good neighbor in a divided world.
Practical stuff.
Practical felt need stuff. or it's generic published Sunday school material from a big curriculum company.
So the pastor spends 3 or 4 years learning to be a gourmet French chef. But then he opens a McDonald's franchise because that's what sells and that's what people will eat.
That is a perfect analogy. And the tragedy is that the congregation never gets to taste the gourmet meal. They don't even know it exists in the kitchen.
Wow.
The source argues that this creates a profound pedagogical disconnect. The seminary, layer A, is too academic and disconnected from real life. The church, layer B, is too haphazard and shallow.
And there's nothing in the middle.
That's the key phrase from the document: missing middleware.
Middleware. Okay, that's a software term, a tech term.
It is. Middleware is the software that acts as a bridge. It connects two different systems that weren't designed to work together so they can talk to each other and share data.
So it's the translator.
It's the translator. In the church, there is no middleware between the high-level academic theology of the seminary and the low-level practical Sunday sermon. There is no structured path that takes a believer from Christianity 101 to graduate-level theology.
So you get saved, you do the basics in the small group, and then you're losing. You just sort of hang out for 40 years. Is that the plan?
That's the de facto plan. You hang out, you volunteer, you serve, you listen to variations of the same dozen or so basic sermons. There is no syllabus for the 40-year-old Christian.
It's incredible when you put it like that.
You can go to church for decades and never actually learn how to read the Bible the way your pastor was taught to read it in seminary.
Yeah.
The tools are kept in a locked box.
That is, well, it's depressing. It implies that spiritual stagnation is almost designed into the system.
It's a systemic flaw, yes, it's a bug in the code. But the source doesn't just complain about it, it actually proposes a biblical model for what this middleware, this advanced instruction, should look like.
Okay.
And surprisingly, it takes us to one of the most difficult books in the New Testament, the book of Hebrews.
Section 4, the biblical model for advanced instruction. Now, Hebrews is a tough book. It's dense.
It is, and that's the entire point. The source focuses on a specific passage in Hebrews chapters 5 and 6. In this passage, the author of Hebrews, whoever he was, is actually getting angry at his readers. He's scolding them.
I have the text right here. He writes, "For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God."
Ouch. It's a burn. He calls them babies. He says they still need milk when they should be eating solid food.
So, biblically speaking, staying in stage 3, staying on the milk of basic doctrines, isn't just a neutral option. It's a sign of stunted growth. It's a pathology.
Correct. The author sees it as a failure, and the source breaks this down beautifully. Stage 3, the lambs on a milk diet, is about mastering the elementary doctrines.
The basics.
The basics. Repentance from dead works, faith toward God, the doctrine of baptisms, and so on. But the source notes something really interesting about how you master these. You don't master them by sitting in a classroom forever.
Oh.
The text says you master them by reason of use. In other words, you learn them in the real world. You learn forgiveness by actually forgiving people who've wronged you. You learn faith by trusting God through a difficult time. It's practical application.
Okay, so if that's milk, what is the solid food? What is stage 4 biblically?
This was the most fascinating part of the document for me. The source defines stage 4, the diet of the mature sheep, by a specific intellectual and spiritual skill: intertextual connections.
Intertextual connections. Okay, we're getting academic again. Break that down for us.
It just means seeing how the Bible connects to itself. It's understanding the deep architecture of Scripture. It's realizing that the Bible isn't just a collection of inspiring quotes and disconnected stories. It's a single, unified, hyperlinked text where every part informs every other part.
And the example the source gave from Hebrews was Melchizedek.
Yes, Melchizedek. The author of Hebrews builds this massive, complex, mind-bending theological argument comparing Jesus to this mysterious figure from the book of Genesis named Melchizedek.
He's the guy Abraham gives a tithe to. He shows up for like 2 verses.
Exactly. He's an obscure character. But to understand the argument in Hebrews, to eat that solid food, you can't just be a casual reader of the Bible.
Right. You have to know the original story of Melchizedek in Genesis 14. Then you have to know Psalm 110, where he's mentioned again 1,000 years later.
And you have to understand the entire Levitical priesthood from the books of Exodus and Leviticus to know why it's such a big deal that Jesus is a priest in the order of Melchizedek and not a Levite.
It's like a puzzle with pieces scattered across a dozen different books written over centuries.
That's it. And the source says this level of understanding assumes deep knowledge of Genesis, Psalms, the Gospels, and the canon of Scripture. You cannot understand the book of Hebrews if your biblical knowledge is limited to Jesus loves me and David killed Goliath with a slingshot.
So stage 4 isn't just about being a nicer person or having more quiet time. It's about biblical literacy. It's about becoming a competent, skilled reader of the text.
It's about loving God with your mind. And the source proposes that the New Testament epistles books like Romans, Ephesians, and especially Hebrews are the curriculum. They are the missing middleware.
Wait, explain that. The epistles are the curriculum, not just sources for sermons.
Think about it. The apostles didn't just evangelize people and then leave them with a pamphlet. They wrote these dense, complex, theological letters to the churches they planted.
Yeah.
These letters are the middleware. They bridge the gap between the historical events of the Gospels and the practical life of the church. They contain the deep theology, the solid food. The source argues we should be teaching the epistles not just as a source for devotional thoughts, but as a rigorous, structured curriculum for mature believers.
But we aren't doing that. We're taking one verse out of context from Ephesians,
Yes.
slapping it on a coffee mug, and calling it a day.
Or we're skipping the hard parts of Romans because they're too academic or too controversial, and by doing that, we are systematically denying the sheep their solid food. We are keeping them on milk.
This brings us to the climax of the whole discussion. Section 5, the radical proposal. Because if we really believe all this, if we believe the church is supposed to be a school for the soul, then we have to put our money where our mouth is.
This is the reversed cornucopia.
The source proposes a what-if scenario. What if we took that $70 billion annual budget and completely flipped the allocations based on this biblical priority?
It's a thought experiment, but a powerful one.
Let's run through the new budget split they propose. I want to hear your reaction to each one.
Okay, I'm ready. Hold on to your hat. First, stage 1, evangelism and marketing, the wide mouth of the horn. Currently, it's up to 20% plus all that hidden overhead.
Right.
The proposal, cut it to 5%.
5%. From a potential $14 billion down to maybe $3.5 billion?
Yeah.
That is a slash and burn reduction.
It is. It means the billboards come down, the Facebook ads stop, the smoke machines get sold on eBay.
The spectacle ends.
The spectacle ends. It shifts the church from being attractional, come see our great show, to something much leaner, much more organic.
Okay, next. Stage 2. Catechism, the foundation. Currently at a paltry 1%. The proposal.
Increase it to 10%.
A tenfold increase.
Yes. This implies a serious investment. Maybe it means every new believer gets a personal mentor for 6 months. Maybe it means a rigorous semester-long course before they are baptized. It means we stop treating entry into the church like a turnstile and start treating it like laying the foundation for a skyscraper.
I like that. Okay, stage 3. Feeding lambs. New believers education. Currently at about 10, maybe 15%, the proposal.
Increased to 30%.
So doubling.
A significant growth. Better Sunday schools, better resources for community groups, better support for young Christians, a robust follow-up system.
And now the big one, the one this is all building towards. Stage 4, feeding mature sheep. Currently maybe 5% if we're lucky, and most of that is for staff. The proposal.
A massive, stunning increase to 55% of the total budget.
55%. More than half of all the money.
If the evangelical church in the U.S. has $70 billion in revenue, this proposal suggests that over $38 billion of it should be spent every single year on advanced, deep, rigorous education for mature adult lay people.
My first reaction is, that sounds amazing. I would love to go to that church.
Me too.
My second reaction is, what on earth would a church even spend $38 billion on? We have no category for that.
That is the exact devastating question the source asks. Would we even know what to do with all those resources?
Because we've never done it. There's no muscle memory for it.
We haven't, and this reveals the true depth of the crisis. We have starved grown-ups for so long that the church literally lacks the infrastructure to spend money on them. We don't have the curriculum. We don't have the trained teachers. We don't have the middleware.
If a local church, say a medium-sized church, suddenly decided to do this, if they reallocated their budget and had, say, $1 million to spend on adult education next year,
What would they do?
they wouldn't know how to deploy it.
They'd probably just build a bigger classroom or hire a famous guest speaker to do a weekend conference. They wouldn't know how to build a 10-year longitudinal gospel curriculum that takes a person from Genesis to Revelation and rivals a university education.
It highlights a total failure of imagination. We can't even picture a church that operates like a serious educational institution.
But the vision is compelling, isn't it? Imagine a church where, over the course of 10 years, you are guaranteed to master the entire canon of Scripture, where you would understand church history, where you would grapple with Christian ethics and philosophy.
And you wouldn't do this to become a pastor or get a degree.
No, you would do it just to be a mature sheep, to love God with all your mind.
It changes the whole reason for showing up on Sunday. You aren't going to be entertained. You aren't going there to get an emotional recharge for your week.
You are going to the gym for your spirit. You are going to work out. You expect to be challenged, maybe even to be confused and have to wrestle with something.
That's a huge paradigm shift.
It is, but the source argues this is actually the ancient model. The early church was an educational institution. The catechetical schools of Alexandria, the intense training of the early believers before they could even be baptized, they took this with the utmost seriousness. The reverse cornucopia isn't a new invention. It's simply a call to align our modern budget with that ancient biblical model.
It's a call to stop widening the front door and start deepening the floor.
That is beautifully put, yes.
So let's zoom out as we wrap up. We've gone from a $70 billion audit to a radical proposal to completely flip the church economy. What is the key takeaway for the listener here?
I think the synthesis is painfully clear. There is a vacuum in the modern church. A huge gaping hole between the seminary and the pew, between the expert knowledge and the congregational understanding.
And into that vacuum.
And into that vacuum, we have poured billions and billions of dollars of marketing, entertainment, and feel-good programming, hoping it will keep people engaged.
But it's sugar. It gives you a rush. It tastes good for a minute, but it doesn't actually feed you.
Precisely. And the result is a church full of people who are stuck on milk. They are, in a very real sense, spiritually malnourished, even though they are consuming religious content every single week.
And the mature believers, the ones who crave the solid food.
They are leaving to find it elsewhere, in books, in online courses, in other communities, or they are resigning themselves to just being volunteers for the show, their own growth permanently stalled.
So here is the provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with today. I want you to imagine your own church. Imagine if the leadership held a meeting tomorrow and said, "We are doing it. We are implementing the reversed cornucopia. Effective immediately, we are cutting the marketing budget to 5%. We are selling the fancy lights, and we are reallocating 55% of our entire budget into deep, rigorous long-term education for you, the congregation."
What would that actually look like on a Sunday morning? Would the band be replaced by a lecture? Would the sanctuary look less like a concert hall and more like a university library?
The really scary question for every church leader, would people still come?
That is the gamble. We have become addicted to the cornucopia. We're addicted to the numbers, the growth metrics, the spectacle.
Are we willing to sacrifice the spectacle of stage 1 to actually obey the command to feed the sheep in stage 4?
Is the church in the business of attracting crowds or in the business of making disciples? The budget tells the real story.
It always does. So maybe next time you see your church's annual report or budget proposal, take a closer look. Don't just look at the total income and expenses. Look at the allocations. Ask yourself, which state are we funding?
Are we feeding the sheep or are we just milking them to keep the show going?
A vital question for every believer. Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but man, it feels like it really matters.
It does indeed. Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.